So, namaskar friends and welcome once again. Let us start lecture number 3. In the earlier lectures, we have tried to make sense of soft skills, and we also had an elaborate discussion on IKS, that is Indian Knowledge System. And now we will see how these soft skills that we have identified as an integral part of our professional life, the soft skills that are so crucial to our successful career, how they have been mentioned in our ancient texts and Indian traditions, and how we can really learn from them and make ourselves perfect in soft skills, so that we can effectively implement them in our workplaces and can harness the best out of them. So, in this lecture I intend to talk about Purushartha, which is a very important concept, and this is in fact an Indian ancient model of human development. So, let us begin by an episode in Mahabharata, a crisis of action, Arjuna at Kurukshetra. You all know about the story and can visualize what I am talking about. In the battlefield, the armies of Kauravas and Pandavas are ready for the battle, and suddenly Arjuna throws his bows and arrows and says that I cannot fight. But then his charioteer is none other than Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna gives him some practical and Dharma sammat, we call it, what is right according to Dharma advice, and then asks him to fight. So, in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna stands at the threshold of action, yet finds himself unable to act. He says that in front of him, whosoever is there, they are all my own people, my guru, my brothers, my priest. So, how can I really fight and kill them? As he surveys the armies, what unfolds is not the fear of death, but a profound collapse of meaning. He starts questioning himself, even if I win, will that win be worth it? Will that be meaningful? He sees before him, as I say, not enemies, but his teachers, his elders, his brothers, his kith and kin, and so suddenly he realizes that he cannot take his bows and arrows against all these people. He says, drishtam evam swajanam Krishna siddhanti mam gatrani. That means, seeing my own people, O Krishna, my limbs give way. So, he does not feel like fighting. His warrior duty or swadharma calls him to fight. He is there to fight, yet his emotional attachments, his bonds of love and kinship resist this violence. The promise of earth, kingdom, power, victory loses all meaning in the face of it. Friends, this is not simple crisis. This crisis is part of our life. There are moments when we have to choose between what is right and what is not apparently wrong, but still cannot be chosen. So, na kangshe vijayam Krishna, na cha rajyam sukhani cha. He says, I desire neither victory nor kingdom nor pleasure, O Lord Krishna. So, why should I fight? In this moment, Arjuna is no longer merely a warrior, he becomes a figure of existential crisis. Mind it friends, our life is full of such existential crisis, and there are moments when we are not able to take an informed decision. His confusion is not between right and wrong, but it is between multiple forms of right, between duty and desire and the ethical consequences of action. We will be thrown in such situations every now and then where we will take some action which will have other consequences, and obviously we will be in a fix whether to take such action at all. Overwhelmed, Arjuna turns to Krishna and surrenders his certainty. Karpanya doso pahasta swabhavah sisyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam. My nature is overcome. I am your disciple, guide me. He falls to the feet of Lord Krishna and he says, "O Lord Krishna, I am not able to take any decision at the moment, so you please guide me what will be the right thing to do." Krishna's response does not dissolve the conflict by offering a simple moral rule. Instead, it reframes the very nature of action. He calls upon Arjuna to act, but without attachment to outcomes. Well, friends, we all know about the Gita, which was recited by Lord Krishna, which was in fact Lord Krishna's way of convincing Arjuna what is right thing to do in a given situation. And so, Krishna tells him that there are moments when you do not have to bother about the outcome, you have to act, because the outcome is not in your hands, the action is. And so, he says, Karmarne vadhikaraste ma phalesu kadachana. You have the right to action alone, not to its fruits. And this is how he tries to, propagate his idea of niṣkāma karma. His, niṣkāma karma, what is this? It is action without desire. Now, the modern people like us will always question, if we are not getting any outcome, why should we act in the first place? Why? Because we want instant gratification of all our actions. So, if I am doing business, I mean profit. But then friends, this needs to be understood that instant gratification does not have a sustainable presence, and again our overindulgence with the outcome impacts our quality of action. So, what Lord Krishna wants to convey is that action without desire, where one remains fully engaged in the world while inwardly detached. Arjuna's crisis reveals a fundamental structure of existence where Dharma, duty, Artha, power, Kāma, attachment, and Moksha, detachment, do not align easily, but exist in tension. Well, in our Hindu Dharma, we always talk about attaining all these four: Dharma, Artha, Kāma, and Moksha, but they all come in opposition to each other and always create conflicting situations. So, it is precisely this condition that the Indian tradition conceptualizes through the framework of Purushartha, not as a set of stable goals, but as an ongoing negotiation between competing claims of life. So, somebody who is able to balance Dharma, Artha, Kāma, and Moksha is somebody who can have a fulfilling life, somebody who can really call himself or herself successful. Coming to Purushartha, this is an ancient Indian model of human development, and it will guide us throughout our careers what it means to be Purusharthi. Who is Purusharthi? Well, I begin, Sreyan Swadharmo Vigunah paradharmatva sanusthitat swadharme nidhana shreyah paradharmo bhayavah. So, better one's own dharma, though imperfect, than another's well performed event. Death in one's own dharma is better. The concept of Purushartha, referring to the aims of human life, provides a comprehensive model integrating ethical conduct, material well-being, emotional fulfillment and spiritual realization. So, Sarpalli Radhakrishnan also notes that Indian philosophy is not merely speculative, but practical, aiming at the transformation of life. So, one has to strike a balance between the different claims on him. It is not about earning alone, it is not about detachment alone, it is not about following the rules alone. So, it is an integration of all these conflicting claims that really results in our balanced self. What is Purushartha? It is derived from Purusha, meaning human being, and Artha, meaning purpose or value. Thus, it refers to the meaningful aims that structure human life. So, somebody who leads a meaningful life is called Purusharthi, and a meaningful action, a valuable action in life leads to Purushartha. So, these aims are traditionally identified as I said, Dharma, Artha, Kāma and Moksha. So, rather than functioning as isolated goals, they represent interdependent dimensions of a balanced life. Ellen Denlieu observes the Purusharthas cover the whole field of human aspirations, from the most material to the most spiritual. So, in Hindutva we believe that the life is divided into 4 parts. We talk about brahmacharya, we talked about grahastha, vanaprastha and sannyas. Now, all these 4 stages of life, they have 4 different motives or aims to be accomplished. Likewise, it is said that our life is about pursuing Dharma, Artha, Kāma and Moksha. So, it suggests that human flourishing lies not in the pursuit of a single value, but in the harmonious integration of multiple dimensions of existence. So, if someone is very rich, but lacks ethical considerations or moral character, obviously he will not be considered an ideal person. Some concern is very rich and profit making, but it does not give value to its employees, neither does it spend a penny in charity for the common good of humans. Obviously, such an organization is not an ideal example of a good organization. So, we can talk about Rita and Dharma, those are Vedic foundations. The origins of Purushartha framework can be traced to early Vedic thought. Friends, in the previous lecture, we found out the treasure house of wisdom that lies in the Indian texts and scriptures, and the first and foremost was the Vedas. So, in the Vedic text itself, we find the origins of Purushartha, particularly in the Rig Veda, the earliest one, where the concept of Rita or cosmic order is central. Rita signifies the principle that governs the universe and maintains harmony. Ritam Satyam Brihat. In Atharva Ved, it says truth and order are foundational to existence. If there is no truth, if there is no order, this world will go to docks, everything will go topsy turvy, everything will be in a disarray. So, human beings are expected to align their actions with this order, which evolves into the concept of dharma. Thus, the earliest articulation of life skills in Indian thought is rooted in the ability to live in accordance with a universal moral order. Mind it, friends, the Indian knowledge system always values something that is deep, something that is deeply philosophical, richly debated and established after much debate and consideration. It does not talk about the terms superficially, and so we need to understand all these concepts in order to really practice what is needed of us by way of soft skills. Then we come to the Upanishadic interiorization and moksha. In the Upanishadic period, particularly in texts like the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is a shift from ritual to inner realization. So, Upanishad, all of us know, the disciples used to sit up means near their gurus, and the gurus used to explain the nuances of life to them, and that used to make lot of changes to them, and so we can learn a lot from such ruminations. So, the focus turns towards the nature of the self or Atma and its relationship with ultimate reality. So, we are not only talking about physical prowess or physical satisfaction, we are also talking about knowing oneself, because knowing oneself or self realization is the key. We see the outside world with our inner eyes. If we are inwardly disturbed, the same disturbed state of mind will lead to disturbed behavior. Fine. So, the focus turns towards the nature of the Atma and its relationship with ultimate reality. The famous Upanishadic statement, Aham Brahma Asmi. What is this Aham Brahma Asmi? Brahma. Brahm is the origin of mankind, the creator of mankind. When we say Aham Brahma Asmi, that means I am part of that same cosmic order. It reflects the realization of the unity of self with the absolute. This marks the emergence of Moksha as a central aim of life. As human beings, we always believe that we are part of the same divine self or cosmic self, and we have been sent to this world with some tasks to perform, and ultimately after performing those tasks we will again go back to the same cosmic whole and unite with that. So, the emphasis on introspection and self knowledge introduces a crucial life skill, the ability to cultivate self awareness and inner discipline. Let us come to the Mahabharata, the biggest known epic in the world with over 1 lakh slokas, and one of the most complex in terms of dharma, niti and strategy and what not. It is a multi-dimensional, multi-model treatise which provides answers to many of our complex questions. Mahabharata explores ethical dilemma and the interplay between different aims of life. So, we find that through different episodes in Mahabharata we come to know about the complexities and the difficult ethical choices and decisions that humans are supposed to make. It repeatedly emphasizes the subtlety of dharma, stating dharma is subtle, shukshma dharma, dharma arthascha kāmasya sa dharmah kim na sevate. From dharma arise artha and kāma, what cannot be achieved through dharma. So, it is believed that through righteousness, by following the right path, everything can be achieved. If you want to be successful, if you want to be prosperous, do not ever take routes that are unethical or immoral. So, this is embedded in our system, dear friends, and we can really learn from that. These insights suggest the ethical life is not governed by rigid rules, but requires discernment. What is discernment? Viveka, our ability to think and judge a particular situation. Contextual judgment. Now, judgment is not independent of the context. So, if the context is known, let us say chori or stealing is a crime, but what would you do if you find a small child who has been starving for days simply because he does not have anything to eat, no support from his parents and does not have a penny on him, suddenly steals one loaf of bread from your general store. Will you kill that fellow for that? Will you send that fellow to jail? Will the police and judge penalize him for this crime? Or looking at this context, you will realize that he was in need of this, and that is why under this kind of compulsion he has stolen from your store and will pardon him. So, contextual judgment always looks at the existing reality and then judges things, and emotional balance. So, discernment, contextual judgment and emotional balance are crucial if we want to take an informed and right decision. Dharma, what is dharma? The principle of order, ethics and right living. So, dharma as opposed to the modern concept of law. Law when enacted becomes binding, and irrespective of a situation it is enacted. So, let us say you break the traffic signal and you pay the penalty, but then in dharma you may not be asked to pay the penalty unless and until the reason for breaking this law is established. If you are driving an ambulance and somebody's life is in danger and you break the traffic signal, you may not be penalized. Why? Because you are saving somebody's life, where every second is crucial. So, in the Mahabharata, dharma is described as that which sustains dharayati, the world itself. So, dharma, a concept that Reggie's simple translation encompasses cosmic order, social duty, moral law and personal righteousness. So, friends, it is all encompassing and very broad. It is not simple law. In the Mahabharata, dharma is repeatedly described as gahana, that is, gahan means deep, something that is unfathomable. Gahan, all of us know, deep, unfathomable, something that cannot be really understood fully. The Bhagavad Gita redefines dharma through the lens of Swadharma, one's own duty. What is your duty? Well, he asks Arjuna, you are a warrior and your duty is to fight. You have come to the battleground, so fight. Aligning ethical action with inner disposition and cosmic order. But do not act in haste, act morally, ethically. Think of the consequences of your action, and that is why fighting against adharma is a valid reason, because you are fighting to restore dharma. So, however, dharma cannot be fully known in advance, it must be interpreted in action. That is the whole beauty, you know. There is no fixed manual for taking decisions, rather the decisions come from your understanding of that particular situation. Whatever your viveka says is right in that particular situation, you take that decision. Well, dharma and its conflicting registers, when we talk about, it is not that easy to understand dharma. In the famous Yaksh Yudhishthir Sambad or dialogue, Yudhishthir is asked what the path of dharma is, and Yudhishthir responds, the truth about dharma lies hidden in a cave. The path followed by the great is the path. महाजनो जैन गतो सपांथा, जिस रास्ते महान जन जाएं उस रास्ते को फॉलो करना चाहिए. That is the path to dharma. So, dharma is always lying hidden from us, and we tread that path and realize it bit by bit. This is not relativism, but what Bimal Krishna Matilal calls moral particularism. Ethical judgment emerges through context sensitive reasoning, not universal rules. And that is the reason, friends, every now and then we hear a call for following the rules not in letters but in spirit. So, dharma operates across conflicting registers like cosmic, rita, dharma, social, varna, ashram, personal, swadharma, situational, apa, dharma. So, there are different aspects of it. Dharma is one with many manifestations. What is your dharma? When we look at the dice episode in the Mahabharata, where Draupadi is being humiliated by Dusasana, and Yudhishthir and all his brothers are sitting with downcast eyes, and equally helpless are Guru Dronacharya, Guru Kripacharya, Dhritarashtra and all the dignitaries including Vidur. You know, we do not understand why none of them is coming forward to save her. Now, just take the case of Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira has to follow Raj Dharma. He is the Raja, and a Raja has given consent to play the game of dice and has also put his own wife on the stake and has lost possession of her. Now, as he is Raj Dharma, he cannot really fight against Dusasan because Draupadi is owned by them, and somebody who owns a trophy, it is his prerogative how to take care of that trophy, throw it or put it in a cabinet and save it. Fine. So, you will find that, but again he is torn between his personal dharma, pati dharma, is also a pati, a husband of Draupadi, a Raja, he also has brother dharma, bhratri dharma. So, all these dharmas are conflicting, and at that point in time it becomes difficult for him which one to justify, which one to follow. Arjuna's swadharma, warrior duty, conflicts with sadharan dharma, that is non-violence. Bhisma's woe bound dharma leads to catastrophic consequences. All of us know Bhisma is a great warrior, and had he taken keen interest, the Mahabharata or the Mahabharata war could never have taken place. But then he has taken a vow that he will not take weapons, and as a result he is going by his own swadharma and does not take part in the war. Alf Hiltewittel interprets this as a narrativization of ethical crisis where dharma is not given, but tested through suffering and failure. Now, so all of us know that dharma is our ability to take the best possible decision in a given situation. Second comes artha, that is materiality, power and the conditions of life. The modern world is dictated by artha, but then artha is not money and possessions alone. In our ancient Indian knowledge system, it is much more than that. It denotes not merely wealth, but the broader domain of material resources, political power and social order that are necessary for sustaining life. The most systematic articulation of Artha is found in Arthashastra of Kautilya, a seminal text which foregrounds its foundational role through the assertion Arthamulau hi dharma kamau. That means dharma and kam are rooted in artha. That means the pleasures of life, the important decisions of life, the duty of life, they are all rooted in resources or possession of artha, that is being resourceful. This formulation establishes that ethical conduct and desire are materially conditioned. Well friends, here I am reminded of a case relating Guru Dronacharya. Guru Dronacharya initially refuses to go to the court of Kauravas to teach the Kauravas, because he is a guru and he believes that even if they are Rajkumars or they are Praja, they have to come to him, not he has to go to them to teach them. But then later on, when he is insulted by Drupad and is suffering acute poverty, he is compelled to take on the job offered by the Kauravas to teach them how to use weapons. So, the desire and ethical conduct are also materially conditioned, making earth the infrastructural basis of human life. At the same time, Kautilya articulates a welfare oriented vision of governance as well. But what Kautilya says is, you use earth is important, but then the earth should also be oriented towards common good or welfare. Praja sukhe sukham raja, praja sukhe sukham rajya. What does that mean? That Raja only deserves to be happy whose praja or subjects are also happy. So, the happiness of the king lies not in his own material possessions and comforts, it lies in the happiness of his subjects as well. So, it indicates that political power must ultimately serve collective well-being. Well, however, epic literature complicates this instrumental view. The Mahabharata offers a critical perspective. It says, Arthasya purushodaso narthodasa kasyachit. Arthat, man is the servant of wealth, wealth serves no one. That means wealth is powerful. It highlights the autonomy and potentially dominating force of material pursuit. Thomas Trotman in Kautilya and the Arthashastra reads the text as an early articulation of state rationality and administrative governance. In contrast, Amartya Sen in Development as Freedom reinterprets Artha through the lens of capabilities and human flourishing, shifting focus from accumulation to freedom. So, thus Artha emerges as a double-edged category, both the necessary condition for ethical and social life and a potential source of domination, revealing the deep entanglement of power, materiality and human flourishing. Now, we come to the next aspect, Dharma, Artha, Kāma, Moksha. So, now we come to the third one, Kāma, which is generally believed to be another name for desire, pleasure or aesthetic fulfillment. It signifies not merely sexual desire as many people believe, rather the cultivated experience of pleasure, affect and sensory engagement. In the Kama Sutra, Vatsyayan defines it as Srotratva Gaksh Jihva Grananam Pravritti Kāma. That means, Kāma is the engagement of the senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste and smell, guided by the mind toward appropriate objects. It is the sensual gratification of pleasures, but not one particular pleasure. Fine. This definition is crucial because it positions Kāma as embodied cognition, where desire is mediated by the mind and culture, not merely instinct. Minded friends, many a time people say sex is instinctual, but here, in this concept, desire is not free, it is mediated by mind and culture. At the same time, the text insists on regulation. Dharmartha Kāmanam samyak anushthanat sukham. That means, happiness arises from the proper pursuit of Dharma, Artha and Kāma, thereby embedding desire within an ethical and social framework. So, Kāma is not free from Dharma and Artha. So, they are all integrated. Well, Kāma may be treated as an affective force, the force of realization or experiencing. However, other traditions problematize Kāma. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is described as Kāma esa krodha esa mahasanaha. That means, desire is all devouring. Any kind of desire swallows you whole. You are engulfed in your desire, and swept by desire, you forget anything else, you dissolve in that. It reveals its potential to destabilize ethical life. Friends, there are many instances to show that the desire for more money has led to havoc. The desire to have sex has led to immoral living. So, desire or Kāma, according to Bhagavad Gita, is a destructive emotion. Thus, Kāma operates as both creative and destructive force, generating a fundamental tension between pleasure and control. But without desire, there is no life. Desire has to be controlled, has to be governed by Dharma and Artha, and then it gives us good result. Aesthetic theory transforms this tension. In the Natya Shastra, which we talked about earlier by Bharat Muni, Kāma becomes Sringara Ras, Sringar, aesthetic pleasure, Sringar Ras, where personal desire is universalized into aesthetic experience. Abhinav Gupta in his Abhinav Bharati argues that through Sadharanikarna, that is universalization, individual emotion becomes collective, contemplative enjoyment, detaching desire from immediate gratification and relocating it in artistic cognition. So, modern scholarship further complicates Kāma, as Sudhir Kakkar in The Inner World interprets desire as central to psychic formation and fantasy, while Wendy Doniger in The Hindus and Alternative History highlights its plural, transgressive and often subversive representations, challenging normative control over sexuality and pleasure. So, thus Kāma, there are different takes on it. It emerges as a deeply ambivalent category. It is at once sensory fulfillment, aesthetic experience, psychological force and ethical risk. So, rather than being reducible to pleasure, it reveals how human life is structured by the interplay of desire, discipline, imagination and power. Now, we come to the last moksha. It represents the most radical dimension of the Purushartha framework, referring to liberation from samskara, that is cycle of death and birth, and the realization of ultimate reality, aham brahmasmi. We talked about that a little while ago. That means we are part of the same cosmic divine whole, and ultimately we dissolve in that. So, this desire for moksha, the last stage, is that stage where we try to realize that unity or oneness. So, in the Upanishads, this is articulated through the identity of Atma and Brahma, encapsulated in Mahavakya Tattvamasi, means thou art that, which reframes liberation as an epistemic transformational shift from ignorance, that is avidya, to knowledge, that is vidya, rather than a physical or spatial scape. However, moksha introduces a structural tension within the Purushartha system. While Dharma, Artha and Kāma are world affirming, moksha is often world transcending, realizing the question, does liberation negate social, ethical and material life or reconfigure them? What is the ultimate? Well, we become very successful, we amass lot of wealth, but ultimate realization, what is that? What is that one final thing that we want to realize? The Bhagavad Gita addresses this tension by proposing multiple paths like karma yoga, jnana yoga and bhakti yoga, thus allowing liberation within action rather than outside it. Philosophical traditions further complicate moksha. Advait Vedant, as systematized by Adi Shankaracharya, interprets it as non-dual realization, where the self is identical with the absolute reality. In contrast, Sankhya Yoga traditions define liberation as kaivalya, the isolation of pure consciousness, that is Purusha, from material nature, that is Prakriti, emphasizing ontological dualism. So, modern scholarship reinterprets moksha in critical terms like Louis Dumont in Homo hierarchicus reads Indian civilization as privileging renunciation over worldly life. We have always been criticized by the Westerners for being too spiritualistic, because they value the worldly possessions more than the spiritual attainments, while Sri Aurobindo in the Life Divine challenges this by envisioning moksha as integral transformation, where spiritual realization coexists with worldly engagement. You need not to be a grih tyagi, a forsaker of your home, in order to realize this kind of spiritual enlightenment. Thus, moksha is not merely a spiritual endpoint, but a critical standpoint that questions the very foundations of desire, power and identity. It destabilizes the Purushartha system by introducing a transcendent critique of all worldly pursuits, making it both the culmination and the deception of human goals. We can really match it with Maslow's need hierarchy theory. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, proposed in a theory of human motivation, conceptualizes human motivation as a structured progression from basic survival to higher fulfillment. This model is typically represented as a pyramid consisting of physiological needs, that is food and shelter, safety needs, that is security and stability, love and belonging, that is relationship and community, esteem, recognition, status and self actualization is the last, that is the realization of one's true potential. So, Maslow argues that unmet lower needs dominate behavior, if our stomach is empty, obviously that will dominate all other thinking. So, this introduces a teleological and developmental logic where human life is seen as a movement towards increasing psychological integration. So, if we map the Purushartha model to Maslow's model, Dharma represents ethical conduct and duty which aligns with Maslow's social and esteem needs. Artha, material competence, corresponds to physiological and safety needs, and Kāma, encompassing emotional fulfillment and relational intelligence, maps onto love and belonging. Moksha or liberation resonates with the idea of self actualization, reflecting personal growth and inner freedom. While Abraham Maslow's model assumes a progressive resolution of human needs, where one ascends step by step towards self actualization, the Purushartha framework envisions life where Dharma, Artha, Kāma and Moksha coexist in enduring tension rather than being sequentially resolved. So, Purushartha is a critical framework for contemporary life. We can see that it emerges as a diagnostic tool for modern existence rather than merely a perceptive model of life goals. Texts like Mahabharata already anticipate this complexity, presenting human life not as resolution, but as ethical struggle, ambiguity and decision under uncertainty. In a world that is shaped by capitalist acceleration, Earth often expands beyond necessity into endless accumulation, restructuring human value in economic terms. Simultaneously, digital and consumer cultures amplify affective excess where calm proliferates as overstimulation, desire without fulfillment and commodified intimacy. Dharma, rather than offering stable guidance, appears increasingly fragmented across competing moral, social and ideological registers. While moksha re-emerges in contemporary forms as mindfulness, wellness or escape, sometimes as resistance, sometimes as withdrawal from systemic pressures, the Purushartha illuminates not balance, but the crisis of balance in modern life. And so, we find that what Halfos sees the Purushartha as reflecting a tension between world affirmation and world renunciation, a tension that is never fully resolved. As Krishna argues, Indian philosophy is a tradition of questioning, and the Purushartha must be read in this spirit, not as fixed goals, but as problematizations of life itself. The significance of this framework lies in revealing that human flourishing is not a state to be achieved, but a practice of negotiating power, desire, ethics and transcendence within overarching historical conditions. So, this is all, dear friends. I hope this framework that we have discussed, you will keep it in mind and it will give you an insight in developing your soft skills, decision making and making ethical, moral and right choices in your life. This is the select bibliography. Thank you very much. Do join me for the next class. Thank you.